Hello, Abnormal Investigations. I've got another encounter for y'all today. Man, it's warm here in Oklahoma. It got up to 60 degrees. Feels like it's springtime. I'm enjoying it. I'm not going to lie. Alright, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get into this one. Thank you for listening. And if you don't mind, please hit the like button. Our likes are down a little bit, so if you don't mind, just reach over there and smash it. It don't cost you a thing. I appreciate it. I'll start this by saying I've done work for the government that leaves very little here I can share within detail. However, this feels like a good way to get some things off of my chest, so call me Mr. Lee. It's not important whether or not that's my real name. I'm afraid that giving my real name here would put me at risk with some figures. When I was 23 years old, I joined the Naval Reserve pretty much on a whim, and after finding that kind of like this life, I kind of liked it. And the sign-on bonus wasn't half bad either. I decided going full-time was the right move. Now, anyone knows that the military basic training isn't that bad. I mean, stand straight, eyes forward, and yell, sir, yes, sir, and just be in pretty much average physical shape. And you'll pretty much get along just fine. My sergeant, he was a goof. However, literally the shortest Afro-American I'd ever seen, only standing just over about 4.5 feet tall. He barely reached up to my chest, but he was a mean little bastard. Until he got his men off to themselves, in which case military conduct went out the window. I can only tell you and everyone this because it was the man that helped me foster a long-standing love for long-ranged rifles. He said I had a naturally calm hand, the eye of a falcon, and the necessary amount of don't give a shit to be one of the best sharpshooters in the group. Not a sniper, a sharpshooter. Which he and I simply ran with. Little did either of us know the whole thing of the training facility was being watched by a creepy mofo in a slick black suit. When training was over, our months of basic fulfilled, and everything done, I found waiting for me in the main facility the short black man I'd come to call Sarge, and a tall, thick, tan-skinned man in a black suit. You know the type of suit I'm talking about. The Secret Service wears them pretty often. The man says he's from an agency whose stance and operation he was not at liberty to divulge under normal circumstances. Now forgive me for being impatient, but who doesn't find the ideal of having a spy or what looked like a spy tell you that he thinks you're cut out for that kind of work? It wasn't until later I would learn this man was no spy, but my mind had been trained to believe just like anyone else's. I found it odd, but the first thing he does when I agree to the job, or at least to look further into it, is escort me to the main facility where he makes a call on a small phone. It was smaller than the average cell phone. That was really what caught my attention. I was so lost in the moment that I completely missed when he claimed I was being processed or something along those lines. I would later find out that this means that my military record would be erased and I'd be subject to more intense form of training that I'll not go into in detail here. I will just give a slight explanation. The new training entitled Levels of Combat Training that Basic simply did not and never would cover. There were only 6 of us, but we were basically being treated like Navy SEALs. At least until one little training session caught my attention, and I'll leave this with just a name. Torture Methodology. Take that as you will, but this was the point where I started to question what I'd managed to get myself into. By the time I got out, I'm told I'll not be allowed to engage in sports activities, competitive fighting of any kind, and several other activities I was no longer allowed to attend. Even after that, they called retirement. This is all the basis to let you know just how bad I was in it. The actual story starts when I'm sent to the Naval Air Station, whose name I'll again not divulge for obvious reasons. It was late summer 2007, hot as hell too. Now I'm a big guy in the sense that all that training put me just over 270 pounds, which is bad when you're only 5'8" tall. Let me tell you, by experience, too big is too big, muscle or otherwise. Regardless, I was new on the base, and even though I had cleared for certain areas, I was odd that those areas seemed to be so far away from the main facility. This facility is like any other military NAS installation. Just to let you know the layout, there is a main office and 4 guards near the main entrance. Of course, plenty of signs that say trespassers will be shot on sight, as well as some other warning of bodily harm and death should someone bother to break onto the base. I was a bit put off by the thought that this base required a certain level of clearance just to get through the main gate. From the gate, a vehicle can either turn left, right, or go on straight, and the left path travels toward the base's commissary, like a small shopping center with several stores put together like a small strip mall. The right path leads, however, along a much longer path, pushing it out toward the galley, an auditorium of sorts, a movie theater, one half of the barracks, and the medical officers' offices. The straight path, however, first loops around the memorial just inside the gate before heading out toward the other half of the barracks. Before the road splits again, mind you, this is a very high description of the layout. There is also on-base living quarters, houses that line up in a large corner of the base, a bar and a diner where people hang out, even batting cages, and a small golf course set aside for everything. This is not a small military base. However, if you keep the main roads until they begin to warn you of advanced levels of clearance being needed, past these signs are nothing but blank roads for several miles until more hangars start to show up. And these hangars are unmarked, whereas normal hangars are marked by certain alphanumeric systems in order to better help soldiers know where it is they need to go. I got tongue-tied. It is at this point that I need to point out that I have always suffered some insomnia, and it had only increased since joining the agency. I really didn't like that we worked so closely with the military, but seemed to keep away from them. And just as well, the people on base always seem to ignore you altogether. Just not normal and a bit unsettling. However, when I get to my moments of inability to sleep, going for a long walk always seemed to help, and fortunately this turned out to be the base where that was, well, a bad idea. Now the land is pretty flat out in the direction of the hangars. I wanted to go as far away from the noise to walk as possible, and I was definitely in the place that gets you out there. It was definitely quiet. I don't know any of you reading this have ever experienced this yourself, but there's an odd feeling that comes with having someone watch you. When doing the kind of work that I did, you tended to get used to that sort of feeling. In fact, you come to rely on it. Even though I do my best to hide it, my hand flips open, the holster of my sidearm, to make it easier and quicker to draw if I need it. A 1911 chambered in .45 APC is nothing to sneeze at, and it really does make a body feel secure just reminding you that it's there. I came to an immediate stop with the pistol drawn. Sometimes I honestly scared myself with how quickly I could have the pistol out and ready. But right now I was actually shaking in a different reason. Roughly 25 yards ahead of me, standing just outside the halo of one of the street lamps that sporadically appear along the road at different intervals, is a figure taller than any man I've seen, but oddly blacked out and still clearly visible. Now remember, I'm a trained marksman. I can hit most targets with this particular sidearm at approximately 200 yards. The green light laser is clearly on the thing's forehead, but for some reason, no matter how hard I squeeze the trigger, I can't fire. Instead, I watch as it oddly shaped its head tilts only slightly. Curiosity to the right before one of its oddly long arms reaches to the lamppost, almost as if it's pulling itself or its body toward the thin metal post. I manage to catch a glimpse of a pale, smooth gray skin and huge black eyes before it moves behind the post and never appears from the other side. I've always been a man of math and physics throughout school, and nothing I've ever studied makes any sense to this. The pole is like any other street light you've ever seen, a thin, maybe 1 foot diameter pole of treated wood with a hooked lamp near the top. It casted a light of a cone light on the road below. This man, person, thing simply stepped out of the shadow and vanished behind something less than half of its size, thin as it was. Shaking my head, I move to get a better look, and no, there's nothing there, until something from the corner of my eye catches my attention. My mysterious stranger is now standing under the shade of the light. Another street lamp roughly 1,000 yards away along the road. Several more times this happens, so I almost get close enough to make out the features of this thing, and it disappears behind a lamppost, only to appear up in front of the next one. I can't explain the feeling I began to feel. I knew that I wasn't cleared for the area, but something was telling me to follow the thing, while at the same time I felt a real chill all over my body. I knew that this was wrong, but my pistol was even rattling in my hand. If you know 1911s, they make a noise if you rattle them, or ours do. I start to notice that I'm not very close to the strange hangers out of the sky when a pair of headlights from far off past the hangers approaches me. The blinding light gave me a moment to very casually put away my sidearm, with good timing as well, since the Jeep in question comes to rest just near me. "Is there a problem, Agent?" one of the two men asked, agent being the loose term for one of my people. It's now that I realize that the agents didn't have any kind of real clearance, that this men didn't seem to care that I was there. One of them was captain of a fairly high rank. No, sir, military hangers, they have it into you pretty hard. They hammer it home. I have trouble sleeping at night, so going for walks helps. I thought I saw someone headed in the direction, so I followed. It must have been one of ours, one of yours. The captain and the other soldier look at one another for a moment. "Well, it's getting dark. Why don't you explain it to me while we give you a ride back to your room?" Living on the base isn't half bad, but the buildings feel like an expensive condo, and it's a bit of a drive considering the low speed limit posted on the base. Trust me, military base is no place to break the law. Sitting in the back seat, I now begin to notice something about the captain's driver. He didn't really move, not in a traditional sense. The vehicle's motions didn't seem to affect him. He never turned to look in any direction other than forward. He didn't even move his arms. Spare those rare moments when he had to make a turn. He almost felt like he was on autopilot or something. "What about this fella you were following?" the captain is oddly asking me. I began describing the thing I'd witnessed, and oddly enough his demeanor began to change. He now constantly scratched his chin, thought before finally he sighed, and lit a cigarette before offering the pack to me, but I refused since I don't smoke. He said, "The tall man. We've seen him around the base all over town, too. It's odd, but I've seen him once myself a few years back when I was in Needles, California. You never been there?" I shook my head no, even though I have supposed UFO sighting capital of the United States. I was staying a little motel out there, rat trap sort of drive back, saying I didn't know nothing about it. It was oddly enough just like any other day. I had no real clue why I was being placed in such a place. They said it was security detail. I was set to watch over a small stretch of land outside a 5-1 along a perimeter fence. Local yahoos had always been trying to find out what exactly we were hiding in this area that we were at that is a number. He laughed funny, though. He'd never find anything there, even if they did get into the base. It really is just an experimental flight equipment. All the crazy shit is further inland toward D.C., but being an agency, "I hope you already know that," he said to me. And as we were driving around, the guy in the driver's seat finally turned and looked at me. And whenever he did, his eyes looked like two pieces of black rubies, hard to explain, shiny. They were reflecting even the lowest light. The low lights on the speedometer inside of the vehicle just lit his eyes. He had a blank look. He reached out to touch me, and I kind of pulled away, and he grabbed me by my shirt and pulled me straight to his face. And he said in a weird voice that kind of would remind me if a lizard could talk. It was weird. And he said, "Stay in your barracks and do not come out here looking for things that you don't wish to find. Have you ever seen a frog eat a fly? It happens fast, boy." And he let go of me. I was so afraid and so sick. I later twisted my ankle. Yeah, I hurt my ankle, right? Couldn't get over it. On accident, though, I promise. And I was removed from the agent detail. I am so glad not to be in the middle of that desert, because I'm afraid that if I would have got any deeper, they would have never let me out. There was something going on down there, something I didn't care to know. And I knew if I stuck around, I would be put in too deep to ever be let go. I think people needed to know this is going on. I think you all know what I'm saying. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, I think I have an idea where you're talking about. You know, I'm not going to speculate, but I kind of have an idea. I think you gave us enough hints in there, saying that it was a number and stuff. So I think, yeah, people have a pretty good idea of what you're talking about. Sounds to me like that you were in a very high secured area. They probably had plans for you, and probably is good you got out of there. What do you all think? Was he in a bad place? Was something fixing to happen? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for listening, guys. Till next time, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner, and watch for those things in the sky and the things that just might, I don't know, come in your back door. I hear it's happening, but you'll hear more about that on our Patreon video, guys, because I can't go into that here. The Patreon link is in the description if you would like to join Patreon so that you're able to see the video release we're going to do. It's going to be deep, scary, with a lot of information, guys. Thank you for listening.